Hey peeps, Tyler here with my 12 favorite books from 2023. I personally wait until the year is over before I do my favorites of the year, because I know people have done them like a month ago. They're in no particular order, but they're also technically in the order from the one I read most recently to all the way back to the beginning of the year. And it actually includes the first and last book I read for the year. Starting and ending the year, awesome with the reading. And I have 7 of them physically. So the first one, again, no actual particular order. Spectrum's Autistic Transgender People in Their Own Words, edited by Maxfield Sparrow. As it says, it's autistic transgender people in their own words. It's an anthology, nonfiction. A couple of them are like poetry. They're all basically mini memoirs of being autistic and trans. So it's everybody that speaks in the anthology is autistic and trans, like I am, but of course neither group is a monolith. But at the same time, of course, there was a lot to relate to. And I actually wrote a review on it. I don't review every single book I read, but obviously I had to with this one. I said I can't fully explain in words how much I loved this anthology. Basically mini memoirs of different autistic queer people, every single one autistic and queer like me, everyone in their own words. It was like a warm hug. I saw myself in so much of it. Of course, we're all different. Neither autism nor queerness are a monolith, but of course, all being queer and autistic, there was a lot to relate to. So much of what I related to, I used to feel all alone about. I didn't know I'm trans until I was 30. I was nearly 32 when I realized I'm autistic. I went 30 plus years without knowing either of them, though I did consider myself being trans long before 30, but I thought it was a sin, plus I was already too much for being multiply physically disabled and bisexual and weird, as I put it at the time, as I now know autistic. So I pushed those feelings back, stuffed them down, tied them up, and gagged them as much as I could until I couldn't anymore. The autism, well, I had no freaking idea what autism meant, beyond false stigmas and stereotypes. I realized I'm autistic through becoming an avid reader in my 20s, and relating to character after character after character, none of them explicitly stated as autistic, but again and again I'd see autistic people saying, those characters are autistic like me because of their autistic traits that I didn't know were autistic traits at the time. And while that was frustrating, because I was like, I'm not autistic at the time, what was downright depressing was I also saw all the non-autistic people reading those same books and hating those same characters for those same traits that I related to, because autistic. I couldn't help but think, do you hate me too? Eventually, that happened so many damn times, I went, okay, fine, I'll look into this autism business already, jeez. And so I did. And then I couldn't stop learning all I could about autism and following autistic people on YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere else, and reading up on autism, which led me to realizing I'm autistic. Everything makes sense now. And now I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be me now. I'm almost 35. It was a journey to get to this point, and the journey isn't over yet. It's not over as long as I'm still breathing. Anyway, I love this book so much. That was my last book of the year. So book number 2, Britney Spears, The Woman in Me. I know many people read this book. I actually read it for nonfiction November, and where it came out in October and I had pre-ordered it, I was just like staring at it for the end of October. But Britney Spears' memoir, everybody's probably heard of this. It is impossible for a book to make me cry more than this one has. Yeah, I cried at nearly every chapter, and there are a lot of them because they are very short. I'm so glad she is finally free. She never deserved that shit. She is such a strong woman to go through all that and still be here and still be so kind. People forget celebrities are human. I've never been like a super fan of Britney, but I was always like a casual fan because I was born in '89. I grew up in the '90s, of course. I listened to Britney Spears in the '90s. And since then, I've continued listening to her every so often, but it's not like I was listening to her very often, but just like once in a while. But of course, I'm disabled, and when I heard what the hell was going on, not only is it a disability justice issue, but also she's still human. What the hell is wrong with people? But book number 3, Dotson, My Journey Growing Up Transgender, by Grayson Lee White. This is a memoir from a 12-year-old. Grayson is now 12 years old. This is his story about what it's like growing up transgender, from small moments like buying clothes or playing football to the big life events like choosing a bathroom, coming out to his friends, and picking a new name. Filled with humor and joy, Dotson is a thought-provoking and honest story of one boy's journey to becoming his best and truest self and sharing that with the world. This one I went on quite a review. This is a wonderful memoir by a 12 or 13-year-old trans boy about his life from 2 years old, knowing he's a boy. It's full of hope and love and support, which is wonderful to see, and even though he's still so young, he's already aware enough to know that having all that support is a privilege he has that a lot of trans people and trans kids don't have. It shouldn't have to be a privilege, though. It should just be normal. And I just remembered I did also make a review video of this. I'll link that in the description. But basically, I go on and on about how much I love it, and yes. Then Becoming a Visible Man by Jameson Green. Which is also a memoir, this time by a trans man who is about the same age as my grandfather. So, from a 12-year-old to an old man. My review for this one isn't that long. I said maybe I'll come back later to write a more thorough review, maybe not, so I'll say this at least. Read this, seriously, please. I love this memoir by a trans man that is my grandparents' age, and I'm a 34-year-old trans man that just started HRT and legally changed my name this year, which is now last year, because it's barely into 2024 as I'm filming this. It's readable, it's informative, it's updated. I love the writing and the voice, and I've tabbed and annotated my copy to hell and back. And by updated, it does say 2nd edition. Also, this book gives me so much hope, and I cried so many happy tears while reading it. Also, it's on Hoopla and Scribd, which is now Everend if you have access to them. Or My Hoopla. Well, no, I think Hoopla is the same for everybody. And Scribd is now Everend. But, this was wonderful to read because there's some history in this, and, like, trans history, and we've always fucking been here. We have always fucking been here. And you will not silence us. The next one, I forget where we're at, but I know there's 12, is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, I don't know what year, how many years ago. Loved it, so I finally read The Haunting of Hill House, and also freaking loved it. I didn't write a review for it, but I now definitely want to read more by Shirley Jackson because I got a book of short stories by her, and whatnot. And I also read a biography on her. I listened to a long autobiography on her this year. Next book, QDA. Oh, I actually have QDA, a Queer Disability Anthology. Featuring fiction, poetry, nonfiction, and comics by 48 writers from around the world, QDA, a Queer Disability Anthology, proves that intersectionality isn't just a buzzword. It's a penetrating and unforgettable look into the hearts and souls of those defiant enough to explore their own vulnerabilities and demonstrate their own strengths. Queer sexuality and disability places me so far outside the realms of the everyday that it renders people silent. Jack's Jackie Brown. QDA is a gathering of people with the transformative and political power of love that transcends gender and ability. Ignorance is the biggest barrier. I feel exhilarated that you might actually accept me as a sexual being, that you might see the deliciousness that is my disability. Andrew Morrison Gurza. An anthology often creates a community in this respect. QDA is truly groundbreaking because it brings two wonderful communities together. This is not a single style, genre, or opinion in the book, but an orchestra of voices. Their seminal works mirror and do not mirror each other. Taken together, they light a brilliant path of honesty. Jennifer Bartlett, co-editor of Beauty is a Verb, the New Poetry of Disability, which I have not read, but I do have on Kindle. And as you already know, I'm queer and disabled. So I love this anthology. A mix of nonfiction, poetry, fiction, a comic, 48 contributors, 97 stories. I did end up rating each one as I went. I think I started a couple of years ago, and I took my sweet old time with it. It rounded out to like 3.62, which I rounded up to 3.75, because some of these really struck me hard and personally. But that's an anthology, so that like obviously affects it. But some of these really struck me hard and personally, all by people who are queer and disabled. I am so very glad I read this and highly recommend it. There's a lot here. And there was physical disabilities, mental disabilities, queer people, trans people, everything. Solwi, probably butchered that, by Lupita Nyong'o, also probably butchered that. I apologize. It's a children's story. I read it, I believe, through Libby. A New York Times bestseller, featured in its own episode in the Netflix original show celebrating Black Voices, recipient of a Coretta Scott King Illustrator Honor Award, recipient of an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Children's Literary Work from Academy Award-winning actress Lupita, becomes a powerful, moving picture book about colorism, self-esteem, and learning that true beauty comes from within. Zoe has skin the color of midnight. She is darker than everyone in her family. She is darker than anyone in her school. Zoe just wants to be beautiful and bright like her mother and sister. Then a magical journey in the night sky opens her eyes and changes everything. In this stunning debut picture book, actress Lupita creates a whimsical and heartwarming story to inspire children to see their own unique beauty. I apologize for probably butchering that name several times. And yes, I read children's books once in a while. I don't read a lot of them, but I do read them once in a while. They don't normally make my favorites lists, but this one did, because my review says, "Don't mind me, I'm just crying from this picture book. At 34 years old, no, I don't have children. This is a wonderful picture book with a much-needed message. It was the afterword that made me go from teary to tears falling down my cheeks. I am white, so I do not know what it's like to be teased or worse for the color of my skin. I am, however, disabled and deformed. not on my face, which is why you don't see it, but I have a meningioma, which is very large, on my leg and privates, among a colostomy and a hernia, and which is for the third or fourth fucking time now, so I'm just living with them, and a whole bunch of scars and shit. And I guess technically this, but yeah. People don't usually notice that one, even though it's also the only one that's always visible. But I am, however, disabled and deformed, and I know what it's like to be called ugly and be teased for those reasons. And with the hemangioma, I did get stares and teased for it and shit in school because I would still wear shorts and shit because I'm like, I'm not sweating to death. So, I still struggle, because if I wear shorts, you can see it. If I'm wearing pants, you can't. But, I still struggle to see myself as physically anything but ugly. I know this book wasn't made for me, but there was a message in it I needed to hear all the same. So many people do. So if you think about what I just said for a second, I think you can see why I loved the book so very much. And highly recommend that one. Then the next one is All the Stories They Said We Couldn't Have, Stories of Trans Joy by T.C. Oakes Monger. I apologize. This is an uplifting and beautifully crafted collection of stories that celebrate the joy of being trans. Written by an award-winning author and following the cycle of the seasons, these empowering vignettes invite readers to find joy in their own lives. One trans person's stories from their life, little everyday stories. Everyone has trans joy. Every story. Sure, struggles are mentioned, but every single one has hope and joy in it from real life. This book is full of trans joy and trans hope and all the things they said we couldn't have and are still trying to scream that we can't have as trans people. This book is chock full of saying, fuck you, yes we fucking can. Though I'm not sure if it actually cusses, I don't remember. But I took this book slow on purpose because each story made me teary, every single one. And each tear was a happy tear. I wanted to savor the joy. Now more than ever, trans people need to see trans joy. People need to see that trans joy is not only possible, it's real. This book is so very important. And it was only March when I read this. But I said, and it's only March, but I'll be hella shocked if anything beats this for my #1 book of the year. I don't think that's possible. I'm not sure. Becoming a Visible Man, the spectrums. If I tried to order these in some sort of actual least to most favorite, I would never be able to do it. Which is why I don't even try. Then I listened to Redefining Realness, My Path to Womanhood, Identity, Love, and So Much More by Janet Mock. There's a lot of memoirs on here. I keep thinking I don't read as many memoirs as I want to, and then several made it onto this list. So there's that. But this is a memoir by Janet Mock, a black trans woman. And I wrote a little review. Janet Mock is a Hawaiian and black trans woman who transitioned as a teenager. She also mentions she is abled and a binary trans woman. I am a white, disabled, non-binary trans man who is just starting to transition in my 30s. I mention all that to point out, yes, we're both trans, but we have very, very little in common. Trans people are not a monolith after all. I wish we being marginalized people in general, didn't have to keep saying that groups are not a monolith. But we do have to keep saying that because people still keep acting like we're monoliths. But, I enjoyed wording. I'm not sure enjoyed's the right word. Hearing her story. I mean, I hate shit she went through, but I appreciated hearing her story and life. She went through a lot of shit, but there's also a lot of hope too. Definitely recommend this memoir, and I enjoyed listening to her narrate it. That's something I definitely love. I have trouble because of ADHD and either getting distracted or falling asleep with audiobooks, but I absolutely love listening to memoirs read by the author. Those I usually don't have an issue with, because there's just something extra special about hearing the story from the person whose story it is, from their own voice. And I do own that audiobook. It just happens to be an audiobook. So, I also listened to the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So far, it's the only book I read by him. And I did a mixture of, I think, Kindle book as I was listening to it on either Everend or Hoopla or something. But I did listen to it as I followed along. And my review says, I barely started wondering how I'd explain that I loved this book other than saying it made me cry a lot, and I realized I can do it simply. The main characters are a bunch of Christian Southern women, and there is a lot of Christian talk in the book, and if you know me, you'd know that had I known that, I'd have never picked up this book. I'd have run away, and fast. And I'm giving it 5 glowing stars. If you don't get that that is my highest possible praise, you don't know me and what I've been through at the hands of Christianity. Edit to add, I should probably state that there is nothing anti-Christian in here. It's not like that, because I know some people might think that after what I said. It's not like that. I just fell in love with the characters anyway and didn't feel preached to. I grew to care about these women. And there's a vampire story and it's horror, and it was fun. So that definitely surprised the hell out of me. Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert. I gave it 4.5 stars. There were a few things here and there that I didn't agree with or that didn't age well, but I don't want to nitpick because I loved almost all of it. Seriously, at least 98% of it. Full of a bunch of things I needed to hear and not in a harsh way. It's full of magic, like the title says. I don't know how to put it, but I want to shove it in everyone's hands. LOL, I cried a few times. I absolutely adored this. It's very inspiring. I know I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff because I read it through Libby on Kindle, so I know I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff. And I absolutely did feel inspired by that book. And then, last but not least, and also the first book I read of the year, The Rise and Reign of the Mammals. A New History from the Shadow of the Dinosaurs to Us by Steve Broussat. Which I just said, so fascinating and well written. Seriously, so many amazing facts written in an engaging way. I loved The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which is the first book. This is a sequel. And I loved this just as much, if not more. Of course, it's nonfiction, it's evolution, it's animals. But The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs being about the dinosaurs, and this being about mammals. About our long ago tiny ancestors. So. I also did a book talk review on it. So, those are my 12 favorite reads from 2023 that I've absolutely loved and have stuck with me for one reason or another. A lot of it is nonfiction, but I think that's just how I work. It's just how I work. So yeah, what were your favorite reads? Have you read any of those? Thank you for taking the time to watch. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to. Anything is appreciated, even just that you stuck it out and watched, and have a nice day.